All right, power property. The power property is anytime that you have an exponent taken to another exponent. So like in this first example, we have d to the 7th inside of the parentheses. And then we have an 8 outside. So the way that I would read this would be d to the 7th to the 8th. Okay, d to the 7th to the 8th. We're again going to go through the expand and simplify method and the rule method. But with the expand and simplify, since this is in parentheses right here, it really means that this whole thing inside of here is taken to the 8th. And if we take, x to the 8th, that means do x times itself 8 times, right? So that would be x times x times x, etc., 8 times. But since d to the 7th is the thing that we are taking to the 8th, this means that we do d to the 7th times d to the 7th times d to the 7th times d to the 7th, and we do d to the 7th 8 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? So we've expanded the 8. Now we would need to expand the 7th. Okay? That would mean, and I'm not going to write out every single one of these, and I don't expect you to either, but that would mean that each one of these becomes d to the 7th would be d 7 times. Okay? Now again, I'm not going to make you write every single one of these. Okay? But if you did, you would have 7 and 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 7. And so what you would have here is you would have this d to the 7th 8 times. Okay? Well, there's your keyword, times. So I have 7 of these, and then I would write it out 8 times. Well, 7 times 8 is 56. So if I were to write all of these out and count them all up, then I would have 56 of these of this d variable written down. Okay, which would mean that my answer is d to the 56. All right. And that leads you kind of right into the rule. Okay? The rule says that if you have a power to a power, you multiply those two powers together, those two exponents. So d to the 7th to the 8th becomes d to the 7 times 8, which is d to the 56. Okay? And we got the same answer here. In the second one, we'll actually be able to expand this whole thing. And that might help you see the expansion a little bit better. So this really means r to the 2nd gets taken to the 2nd. So I have r to the 2nd times r to the 2nd. Then I can expand each one of these. That gives me r times r, and that's another r times r. And this is a pretty easy expansion then. Now we just have a multiplication. Everything is very simple. No more exponents. Count them up, you get 4. So this is r to the 4th. Okay? Then using the rule, it says to multiply the exponents. So r squared squared would mean r to the power of 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4. And so you get r to the 4th that way. Then this next one, we're going to introduce a coefficient and see what that does. So think of this a step at a time, all right? We're going to ignore this for now. And we know what this means. This means 9 times x times x times x. Okay? We'll get our 2 there. And if I take something to the 2nd, that means I take it times itself. So it means I've got this taken to the 2nd. So it's this times itself. So it's 9 x to the third times 9x to the third. Okay, so we've got two of them. Then I'm going to expand each one of these. 9 times x times x times x. 9 times x times x times x. And then I'm going to lump the 9's together and the x's together. And at this point now I have 9 times 9, which is 81. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these x's. So that's x to the 6th. Okay, so your final answer here is 81 x to the 6th. All right. Using the rule, since we have a couple different things in here, it's really almost like you're using the distributive property. So you're distributing the 2 to both of those things, okay? Which means that you're doing, this was really a 1, so it's really 9 to the 1 times 2, and then x to the 3 times 2. Okay, so you're distributing and you're multiplying the 2 times both of the exponents in there. All right? And that gives you 9 squared. 3 times 2 is 6. 9 squared, we can figure out, that means 9 times 9, which is 81. So it's 81 x to the 6th, same as what we got above. And next, we've got a 2z to the 4th, and that whole thing is to the 4th. So I'm first going to take this part and write it out 4 times. And now I'm going to expand each one of these. And here's my 2z to the 4th right here, and then another 2z to the 4th, and then another 2z to the 4th, and then the last 2z to the 4th. Put all the 2's together, and you've got 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. And then you've got 4 z's, 4 more z's, 4 more z's, 4 more z's. Okay, this 4 of these 2's right here gives me the 2 to the 4th. And then I've got 4, 8, 12, 16 z's. So it's z to the 16th. Sorry that my 2's and z's look pretty much identical. I don't have very good handwriting. 2 to the 4th we can figure out, because that's 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, 8 times 2 is 16. So that's a 16 z to the 16th. Okay? Using the rule, we take that 4 and distribute it to here and to there. Well, really that was a 1 because there was nothing there. So that means 2 to the 1 times 4, z to the 4 times 4. And that's 2 to the 4th. Z to the 4 times 4 is 16. And then we already showed 2 to the 4th is 16. So final answer, 16z to the 16. We got 2 more. I take this stuff that's in the parentheses and write it twice. And then I expand each one. And then I rearrange some stuff, so I put my 2's together, my x's together, and my y's together, and then count them up. I got 2 squared, I got 4 x's, and it looks like I got 8 y's. So it's 2 squared, x to the 4th, y to the 8th. 2 squared is 4. So we got 4x to the 4th, y to the 8th. Okay? If you're using the rule, just make sure you simplify by distributing the 2 to everything. So that's 2 to the 1 times 2, x to the 2 times 2, y to the 4 times 2. Then that means that you have 2 to the 2, x to the 4, y to the 8th, and 2 squared is just 4. Okay? Lastly, I got this 4ab and I've got it taken to the 4th. So I've got 4ab, 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 4ab. And group stuff together. And I've got 4 of everything. So this is 4 to the 4th, a to the 4th, b to the 4th. And 4 to the 4th, that means 4 times 4 times 4 times 4. Okay? 4 times 4 is 16, times 4 is 64, and 64 times 4, 256. So 256, a to the 4th, b to the 4th. All right? Using the rule, all of these on the inside have a 1 as their exponent. So that means I'm going to do 4 times 1, 4 times 1, 4 times 1. So that's 4 to the 4 times 1, a to the 4 times 1, and b to the 4 times 1. And that gives me 4 to the 4th, a to the 4th, b to the 4th, which then we just said is 256, a to the 4th, b to the 4th.